It's the damning verdict our visitors live in constant fear of. I'm sorry, madam, but your family treasure is a fake. Ouch. Stand by for some uncomfortable moments, the kind you can't help looking at. Welcome to Priceless Antiques Roadshow. Welcome back as we delve deep into our treasure chest of roadshow memories. Hosting this show is a great pleasure, but as my former colleagues will testify, you're certainly kept on your toes.
What they were essentially looking for was a fall guy.
I wonder whether you'd like a cigar.
Oh, my dear.
It might surprise you, but some owners don't react well to a big valuation.
It's appalling. I hate the idea of something being killed for art.
But watch out for a twist in this owner's tale.
11,000, 12,000, 13,000.
And our feature about fakes wouldn't be complete without this classic reaction.
Copies are exceedingly clever. An informed expert can tell you quite definitely, without any shadow of doubt, that this is absolutely nothing to do with John Constable.
How can you be absolutely sure?
Oh dear, that lady was not going down without a fight. The full story coming up. But first, imagine this ad in the Situations Vacant column. Wanted, perfect host for TV show. Must be happy to travel, not mind the odd downpour. Well, there are a few more qualities you need to step into the role of presenter on the Antiques Roadshow. I'm the fifth person to have enjoyed the challenge. So what do my former colleagues reckon it takes? I'm going to pay particular attention to this.
This week we've brought the roadshow to Leamington Spa, or Royal Leamington Spa, I should say, because this was a favourite town of Queen Victoria.
When I first started presenting the Antiques Roadshow, more than 30 years ago now, I remember asking the producer what he thought my role was.
Gosh. Oh, wow.
And he said, you're the cement. And that's the way it's always been. The presenter is there simply to introduce the programme, to describe the location, to sum up the day, and ask questions of the experts that ordinary members of the public might want to have answered.
On the hinge.
Oh, it's kind of secret.
Here's the safety one.
Secret catch.
It's to stop casual people. One from stealing your tobacco.
Very effective. Ever seen anything like that?
No, I haven't.
Welcome to this, the first of the BBC's Antiques Roadshows. It's the first of 8 programmes in which we're visiting towns and cities in England, Scotland and Wales.
Since the very first show, there have been 5 well-known faces who've stepped into the role of presenter, beginning with Bruce Parker.
Well, come on, let's get Arthur in on this. Arthur, where are you? Here we are. What about this?
The first producer, I think, wanted me to be the first presenter because I was used to doing a live programme every day. He wanted somebody who wasn't, if you like, famous. He also wanted somebody who, in between doing the bits of broadcasting, could actually mix with the people, if you like, and chat to them and so on, which, of course, in my ordinary job, if you like, which was being a BBC reporter, journalist, that was my day-to-day work, talking to people and getting on with them, basically.
And you thought something like £50?
Yes, I did.
So how do you feel about that?
I don't know, my feelings are mixed now because I wouldn't want to sell it, but it's worth rather a lot to keep at home.
Also hailing from News was celebrated broadcaster Angela Rippon, who hosted the show just after Bruce. Hugh Scully came next, beginning his near 20-year stint in 1981. Michael Aspel was the face of the roadshow from the year 2000, and I've been presenting the show for the last 2 years. Now, I'm still fairly new to the show, but if there's one bit of advice I would give to a presenter, it's to expect the unexpected.
This is a nice photograph. Is this elegant lady a member of your family?
No, she killed my mother's dog.
Oh.
My background was light entertainment, really, though I had done 8 years as a newscaster in the 60s, so I'd done the more serious side. But I'd done children's programmes, I'd done light entertainment, chat shows, Miss World, all of that stuff.
She was very sorry, obviously, and she sent my mother some money and this picture of herself with her own dog.
Her own dog. That's the words insult to injury spring to mind,
It is, yes.
This week we're in a place most of us think of as the childhood home and burial place of Princess Diana. For every edition of today's programme, I film a formal introduction. But for the presenters in the early days, it was a much simpler affair.
Whenever the Antiques Roadshow does stop anywhere, I make a point of searching out the local guidebook. And I was intrigued to see that the Northallerton book claims very firmly that Queen Elizabeth I didn't sleep here.
As the programme evolved, things got more ambitious and sometimes rather challenging for the presenter.
Because once the director knows that the presenter is up for almost anything, he'll think up almost anything for you to do. And I remember when we were at Tidworth in Hampshire, Army headquarters, where I started my national service, in fact, they got a tank for me to ride in. And he said, it's great, we've got you all the gear as well. You know, you've got the helmet and the headphones and the uniform and all that, and you'll look like a real tank man.
Well, how's this for a weapon of iron? I'm on my unstoppable way to Tidworth, one of the oldest villages in Britain.
This, however...
Filming styles and presenters change, but there's one group of people who are always there to stop you getting too big for your boots. The experts. And I can tell you, it's essential to get these veterans on side.
Do I give new presenters a hard time? I give everybody a hard time.
Busy day, Michael?
Haven't stopped for a moment, David.
Refreshment?
Oh, thank you. Hang on.
How clever.
Trompe l'oeil. Isn't it wonderful?
On the very first night of the very first dinner before my first show, I was sitting there with all the experts, or rather was introduced to them, and one of them said to me, I said, I'm sorry. He said, I said, I'm sorry, I don't. And he was saying sequins, because he associated me with Come Dancing, which I had done once, I think, on my 27th birthday, which shows you how long ago it was and when he last watched television.
I've met lovely Hugh Scully. He's been the first presenter. And I have to say, we teased him like mad. And he's a great one to be teased because he does react.
What they were essentially looking for was a fall guy. And unfortunately, on several occasions, I was the fall guy.
Hugh, I wonder whether you'd like a cigar.
Oh, my dear.
Is it wonderful?
Well, you know I do like cigars. Isn't that extraordinary?
Eric, who's your friend? Well, he may look Churchillian, but he is in actual fact French. Made primarily as a toy, yes. You can stroke him, he's quite a harmless. Quite harmless. Love it.
What? I mean, the great thing about Hugh is that he's the sort of chap you can have a laugh with, and so just to ask him to stroke that little dog's nose and then just to pull that cord and to watch his reaction, which if you see the man, I mean, it's not feigned. I mean, he really does, jump out of his wits.
Being teased by the experts is par for the course, but the ultimate humiliation for any presenter has to be mistaken identity. Poor Hugh Scully had a sobering encounter some years back.
Of course, one always remembers the people on the Antiques Roadshow, and many of them were substantial characters. I came across this lady and asked her if I could see what she had in her bag.
What would be in there?
And she didn't think I was on the show. She thought I was some kind of tow rag who was looking to steal whatever it was she had.
You are generally with this. You're not just saying you're with this. You're with the company.
I am with the Antiques Roadshow.
For the whole of the rest of the day, she was very suspicious of me.
Poor Hugh. And she still didn't look convinced. Mind you, we all have some moments we'd rather forget. And I'll share with you my most embarrassing roadshow moment at the end of the programme. So if we now know a bit about hosting the show, what about our experts? What drives them? In this series, we've asked them to reveal what first inspired them. Today, John Badley shares a special piece from his collection.
Size isn't everything. And one of the things I've learnt in all these years, being both an antique dealer and an auctioneer, is actually training to use my eyes. And I think what attracted me to this particular sculpture, and I've had it for 28 years, was that it is beautifully carved in huge detail. I used to have a stand down at Bermondsey Market in South London, and although I wasn't the best seller in the world, I could buy quite well. And that was one of the reasons going down there. Getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, driving down there in the pitch black, setting up a store. And I was amazed that I could find something in Bermondsey that was made in Germany, probably around about 1600. for, I think it was like 30 or 40 pounds. And when I got it home and looked at it in more detail and got my glass out on it, I suddenly realised it was made from just one single piece of wood. And you can see St George here with his halo on, this billowing cape behind him, the horse with his mane, and even the reins are carved. I mean, absolutely exquisite. And if you look at the dragon, sadly being killed below him, he's actually got flames coming out of his mouth, again carved from this piece of, I think it's boxwood. An amazing work of art. I know it's tiny, I know it's, you have to really look at it, but I think that's really what taught me to use your eyes, but then you can actually define quality, and this is not in the greatest condition. But it's 400 years old, so it still gives me joy today, 25 years after I bought it.
Now, people are always asking, what happens to objects after their moment in the spotlight on the Antiques Roadshow? Well, most go back on the shelf, but a few embark on interesting journeys. Visitor Anne O'Connor came to the show on Guernsey towards the end of the day, was in two minds about coming at all, because her heirloom was a source of shame and resentment. But her conversation with expert George Archdale proved a turning point.
I think I've always been an animal lover. From the age of 14, I did my Bronze Duke of Edinburgh at the animal shelter, so we're caring for all sorts of sick animals. Worked in a vet's, and I also, from 1984, went out to Kenya for the first time. And I have been 8, 9, 10 times to Africa, and I would have very happily live out there.
So for Anne, inheriting a family heirloom made from a large piece of rhino horn presented a serious moral dilemma.
I absolutely hated it. I think it was because of the connotations of some poor animal, some magnificent animal, so beautiful, and in these days so endangered and so rare, should have lost its life. And I think that's just despicable.
Now, I'm told that these longer horns come from the African rhino. What do you think about it coming from a rhino at all?
I think it's appalling. I hate the idea of something being killed for art.
And what made it even worse was a dark family secret.
I think it probably will go back to about 1900. I have a horrible feeling my grandfather killed it.
Anne's grandfather was a bit of an adventurer. Like many European men of his generation, it was thought that he tried big game hunting during trips to the African continent. It had always been assumed that he'd bagged the very rhino whose horn adorned the family mantelpiece.
She told the story that he'd been sent round the world by his wife's family, having married above his station. So they just wanted him out of the way. Would you like to go shooting in Africa?
But there was some good news to reveal about Grandpa.
The only thing that doesn't tie up, 1900 you mentioned, that sort of date, this is much earlier than that.
That's nice then.
Well, at least I can say that it's unlikely that he shot the animal.
It was just wonderful. It was magnificent. I think there's probably a great big smile spread across my face when he said that. Thank goodness it wasn't Grandpa.
And there was more interesting, if controversial, information.
They do make quite a lot of money at auction. So I'm glad you're sitting down. It would make between 15 and 20,000. So it's a very special object.
And then he asked me if I liked it a little bit more, and I told him I probably ought to, but I would have to think about that.
Anne was overjoyed to have her family history rewritten and surprised by the high valuation. But that wasn't the end of the story. Following the show, she settled on a new plan to make good use of her inheritance, and she came to London recently to follow it up.
She said, well, if I do sell it, can I give some of the money to the fund to protect rhinos? And we all thought what a delightful idea this would be.
There's never been a better time to raise money for the rhino. Across Africa and Asia, poaching is at its highest level for 15 years. The animals are illegally hunted for their horns, which are prized for their ornamental and supposed medicinal qualities. This activity has placed the rhino dangerously under threat. Anne came to London to sell her unwanted inheritance at auction, with plans to put the proceeds towards rhino charities. And when she arrived, her chances of making a hefty donation looked good.
Expectations hopefully very good. Apparently they said 1 or 2 people have been looking at it and have asked to have it out of the glass case and to look at it. So hopefully there'll be at least 2 people wanting it and the price will go up.
Selling a rhino horn is not an easy procedure. Anne followed careful regulations and a special licence was needed. All this painstaking work meant there was a lot riding on the sale. George hadn't seen Anne since the filming in Guernsey, and he came along to support her on the big day.
Hello again. How are you?
Very good. How about
Very
you?
exciting day, isn't
Yes,
it? Really?
It's wonderful,
Yes.
isn't it?
Will you be
Yes,
sad
yes,
to see it go because of the family? No.
No.
Well, that's good.
Also there to offer support was Kathy Dean from one of the charities Anne had chosen to support with the proceeds from the sale.
I have to say, fundraising for rhinos is really hard. It's not the most popular cause. It's difficult to explain that rhinos are linked to ecosystems and to the local communities that live around the rhinos' habitat, and it's just damn hard to fundraise. So when we heard that Anne wanted to give some of the proceeds from today's sale to us, we were really excited. It's a tremendous gesture. With the money we receive from today's auction, we'll probably want to put it into the real priority areas. At the moment, that's Zimbabwe, which has lost 1/4 of its black rhinos over the last 3 years. In general, we give 60% to anti-poaching and monitoring patrols throughout Africa and Asia, and about 30% goes on people projects.
The auction room filled and the sale got underway. But did Bonhams think it would sell?
We hope the rhino horn will do well and will sell within the estimates. However, given this is an auction, part of the magic of it that it can do much more than the estimate. On the other side, it can also fail to sell. So we hope for the best.
And the last lot, lot number 313.
Good luck.
It's very good brush, very good rhino cup. 313. And who'll start this? £10,000 for this. 10,000 for it. 11,000, 12,000, 12,000 pounds, 12,000, 12,000 pounds. Any more? 12,000, 13,000, 14,000, 15,000, 15,000 pounds. Any more in the room? 15,000. All done. Sold.
Has it sold?
I think it has. So I think we're okay. It's gone.
As the hammer went down, George and Anne were confused. The rhino horn hadn't reached its reserve price, which could only mean one thing.
So we've just learned that it didn't, in fact, sell at £15,000. Deeply disappointing.
Yeah. I was hoping, there was somebody out there that was going to want it.
This particular lot did not sell, and we cannot completely explain really why. We did have all the people in town and it was very heavily viewed, but the reason for that could be that it was slightly damaged around the rim, and there is always a certain condition issue, and some people are very prone to that.
And maybe the positive thing is that there isn't such a demand for African rhino horn. Maybe it's a good thing the price was lower than we'd expected.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
If people don't want to buy it, then maybe the few ones we've got left, they might still be alive.
Leave them alone and they can stay alive and running around the African bush.
Yeah.
But all's well that ends well. Anne's initial disappointment was short-lived, and soon after the auction, a buyer came forward and paid £15,000 for the horn. Every last penny of it is going towards protecting the rhino. That was quite a roller coaster for Anne. Great news that the money raised is now being used for good. So 3 cheers for her generosity. Now, having queued patiently for hours to see our experts at the Antiques Roadshow, there's one outcome none of our visitors wish for. That's right. No one wants to hear the dreaded F word.
In my opinion, these are fakes.
I think it's just a little bit too good to be true.
It is actually a complete fake. Right.
When you have to tell somebody that what they brought along is a fake, you try to do it as diplomatically as possible.
People tend to take it well, but one doesn't actually know whether they're taking it well or whether they're pretending to take it well. This one is brand new.
Brand new, right.
We won't quibble. I'm not sure whether it's a stiff upper lip. I think it's a sort of self-protection, really. They're trying to appear not silly.
Now, this has been in our family for hundreds of years.
Oh, yes.
This chap's plate, it was so obviously wrong. I mean, Sometimes you think, well, maybe, maybe not, but this was just a screaming dud.
A spurious mark. It's not really of that period.
Isn't it?
No. It's a copy from a Sèvres one. The ground colour's not quite right, the gilding's not right, and the painting is typically 19th century. But it's a very pretty dish.
Yeah, yeah.
Worth about 70 to 100 pounds.
Whether they go away and think, well, that bloke on the Antiques Roadshow didn't know what he was talking about. Been in my family for 300 years, it must be right. I suspect there's a bit of that.
The Antiques Roadshow is no stranger to fakes and forgeries, and over the years the team has come to recognise some regular offenders who they are never too surprised to see.
Well, the most common type of fake that we see on the programme isn't so much a fake, it's more of a copy, and it comes in the form of a violin.
Antonius Stradivarius, Fecit Cremona, Anno 1764.
For every real, authentic Stradivarius, there are probably 250,000 copies.
You're probably aware that the label inside is a copy. Yeah, they nearly, well, obviously, the majority. Another Strad.
Now, you know, an interesting violin may have a label inside, so you hold it up to the light.
Very carefully, you've got to get the light through. You can see the name Stradivarius.
And you know that this violin was made in Germany in 1920.
Guy, do you think you've got a Stradivarius?
Yes, I believe so.
Well, yes.
It's got its name on it, anyway.
It has indeed got his name on it, and it says Antonius Stradivarius Cremona, 1713. But then underneath that, it says made in Czechoslovakia.
Oh, I see.
Now, everybody with a sense of history knows that Czechoslovakia didn't exist until 1919.
If I have to say who gets the vote for providing the most on an Antiques Roadshow, it was without question Malta.
This is the 11th Stradivarius I've seen today.
I think, quite honestly, there must be thousands on that island. People want to believe they've got a Stradivarius for, you know, one simple reason. I think they want to be rich.
A close second to the world's most famous violin is one of Britain's great landscape painters, John Constable. Fine art expert Philip Mould is always on the lookout for the many imitators of his work.
Far and away the most common type of not right picture, so I would want to just hold back that word fake for a moment, is a copy or a circle of picture, someone imitating the work of a great master. Say, for example, Constable.
OK, we've got the first Constable of the day I see here. We look at the front, and it's a bit of an oh dear.
An expression that we use in the art business quite a lot, it's signed all over. In other words, the whole painting should, rather like the signature, express the imprint of the artist.
It isn't a Constable.
It isn't.
No, it isn't a Constable. Although this is a very painterly picture and painted by a real artist, it lacks that energy.
I think you can tell when a picture's not right because it doesn't have that sort of conviction, that inner energy. You can just smell it, to tell you the truth. It's just lacking that sense of a story, that conviction.
It did have a sticker on the back years ago, yes.
Saying what?
John
Constable,
Constable.
RA,
Yes.
and Spidery Black.
But
right.
ever since Constable lived and died,
Yes.
there've been people desperate to make paintings Constable.
Sometimes you get people standing there dogmatically, the other side of the table, saying, you are wrong.
Sign down here, John Constable, 1813.
And this has to be the most priceless moment in all the years of the Antiques Roadshow, when one hopeful owner wasn't having any of it.
An informed expert can tell you quite definitely, without any shadow of doubt, that this is absolutely nothing to do with John Constable.
How can you be absolutely sure without an X-ray? Copies invariably are all blurred and brown down there, aren't they?
No, I wouldn't say so. You see, copies are exceedingly clever.
It feels a bit like a sort of an arm wrestling match, the other side of the table, and you're trying to sort of push them into understanding the reality of the situation. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes they go off unhappy.
Anyway, I do appreciate you bringing it in, and I've enjoyed the lively discussion.
And you can't tell me who it is?
No, I can't tell you who it is, but I can tell you it's not a constable. If it was a constable, £3 million plus.
Could it be a what?
It would have... No, it's definitely not F.W. Watts.
Could it be a Paul?
It's not constable, it's not Watts. One could say that it's more in the style of Paul than anybody else.
Oh dear. As Philip Mould said, arm wrestling becomes the latest sport to be televised. And that was certainly one memorable lady. Our experts have all got a favourite visitor they recall meeting on camera. For Glassman Andy McConnell, it wasn't a feisty character he remembers most strongly, rather a dedicated collector who received some happy news on a visit to the Antiques Roadshow.
One, I guess, that sticks out probably the most is a guy at Bridlington who'd come down from Whitby on the bus with a huge bag of mixed glass that he'd bought at boot fairs, another thing that I fully approve of, that he'd picked up over the years.
This is just sort of 5 pieces of probably about 200 various pieces of glass that I have at home.
And where are you finding these things?
It's mainly car boots. Occasionally there'll be something in a charity shop, but not very often. But car booting is my hobby.
Brilliant. And I just love it. I'm up every Sunday, 4 o'clock in the morning, so often. And he was one of the people who just bought what he liked. He wasn't very academic in his buying. That caught my eye. And so there was a group of Danish and mostly Danish glass and a Swedish vase that we talked about, and I'd hidden the gem behind the rest, you see, so the viewer couldn't see this, and it was sort of back in his own mind because the arrangement we'd sort of relegated it. One that really caught my eye is this little beastie.
Really?
That's a very nice thing. What's the story of that one?
A friend of mine, she actually bought it at a car boot, thought I might like it, and posted it off to me. And I got it, and it was sort of very disappointed because I thought it was broken.
And it was rare. I've not actually seen one. It was called a Crizzle Stone, a piece of very early studio glass, an artistic creation, a unique piece made by Michael Harris whilst he was in Malta running Medina before he came back to England to found Isle of Wight Studio Glass. So what we have here is a contrast between this lot, picked up at a booty for how much?
Well, £1.50, £2, £3.
£600-700 those?
No.
And that? 1,500? I mean, it was like you just detonated a bomb in his mind. He just went...
Well, I'm absolutely amazed.
Well, that was worth a bus ticket, wasn't it?
Well, it certainly was worth a bus ticket. That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
That was certainly a good day out for that visitor. OK, earlier I promised to share my worst roadshow filming moment. As Michael Aspel said, when a director knows you're up for anything, that's when things can go awry. Oh, I knew it! Serves me right for trying to demonstrate my athletic prowess. Ha ha. Thankfully, no bones were broken. Bye-bye.
It's the women's giant slalom, and we've got all the action from Vancouver as we head there next. Then at 8, 2 men determined to make it to the Winter Olympics by any means. Ed Lee and Graham Bell head for Colombia.